the suffering that the people on the other side went through, you might understand why they're coming. So this is, see this? Mm-hmm. This is a map of all of the history of the expulsion of the Jews.
Yo! Okay, dude. Okay, I'm gonna say it. He watches the show. Pull the map out. Reframe it. Talk about the anti-Semitism baked into Christianity.
But here's my point. I don't think we should assume that we know these statistics are correct.
That's crazy.
I don't think we should assume we know exactly.
Come on. Kick his ass.
We do know a lot.
Dude, kick his ass. Get out of here. Bro's denying what you can see with your fucking eyes. Anyway, let's watch Bassem Youssef versus Piers Morgan now.
I was, don't know about you, maybe you weren't surprised. I was completely staggered by the response globally to our interview several weeks ago. Were you taken aback by the
Bro, he's such a clout shark. He switched sides, bro. I swear to God. The only side that matters right now for you, though, is the top of the hour ad break avoidance side.
Been showing a certain point of view. I'm not
Turkish streamer doesn't know about DNS 222. Bitch, I've been in America for that reason.
Allow certain voices, certain voices from the other side to be heard, and that is why you see the frustration. Whenever you speak to people in the Middle East, they tell you the same thing. They're not very happy with the coverage of the Middle East because our voices are not heard. Now, I am the least qualified person ever to talk about this conflict, and yet just because I relate some of the talking points that we say and we hear the whole time, people felt heard. And when people have this feeling, they're happy. They have this response. They say, "Oh my God!" For the first time, the West are actually hearing our point of view.
He's so right.
Some of the points of view might not go well with other people, but at least we have a conversation. And I think that is the reason why people reacted that way. Yeah.
It's such an incendiary subject matter. I've never seen social media so ablaze with hostility on both sides. Did you actually, as well as enormous praise from the Arab world, did you also get criticized by some parts of the Arab world for not going perhaps hard enough?
Oh, you didn't do that, you didn't do that. The thing is, this is like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Right.
If you don't speak up, why don't you speak up? If you speak up, you didn't speak up enough. If you're done, why are you do? If you speak up too much,
I hope Piers doesn't just like fucking use Bassem's like media interest, like because he's a media guy, to just like drive the conversation away to dumb shit
on social media. But yeah, there was a backlash, but there's also a backlash from the other side, which I mean here and other comedy clubs, I worked with people from all kinds of different backgrounds, Jewish, Christians, Muslims, Arabs, atheists, all kinds of people. And there are a lot of people who went into my socials like, "Oh, so you're a terrorist sympathizer now," you know. And I think it is important to have a nuanced, deep, interesting, intelligent conversation. A lot of people waiting for this are kind of like, "Yeah, Bassem, bury Piers, show him." And this is the problem with the news today. The problem is the news today, it's not about the news anymore. It's about the people giving you the news. So it becomes a show, a circus. Two gladiators in the Colosseum, two pigs fighting in the mud. And this is why people don't get anything out of it. It's a circus.
You know, one of the things I heard a lot was, "Who is this guy?" And they weren't talking about me.
Sometimes I wonder.
Now, obviously, you're very, very well known in the Arab world. You're known as the kind of, they called you the Arab Jon Stewart, and you're well known in America, but you weren't that well known, for example, in the UK. And I think what this interview did, it made a lot of people think, wow, all right, this is incredible. But tell me more about Bassem Youssef. And I did a bit of research into your life, and it is a fascinating journey that you've gone on to get here to Los Angeles. And I think it's worth just taking a little beat here to talk about this, because you began in Cairo as a heart surgeon. I mean, that was your career path.
Yes.
And you were a heart surgeon.
I was a heart surgeon until, I spent 19 years in that career, 7 years in medical school, 12 years as a practicing doctor. And 2011 happened, and the revolution happened, and I had my own show on YouTube. I did like small videos.
Well, I'm going to come to this, because I was by coincidence, I had just joined CNN to replace the great Larry King. And I hadn't actually done any live show. I'd done a few weeks since I joined of taped interviews with big names, Donald Trump, Oprah Winfrey, things like that. And I was flying back to Los Angeles when I got a message that Egypt was going up in the start of the Arab Spring. And I actually went to a studio very near here, about a mile down the road on Sunset, the CNN studio, the old Larry King studio. And I went live for the first time, and it was about the Arab Spring. It was about what was happening in Egypt. And at the same time, you, in Egypt, were actually in Tahrir Square helping wounded protesters, actually medically treating them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this was a kind of movement that inspired a lot of Egyptians. At the time, I was in the hospital, and a lot of people just had volunteered, and the nurses were just like giving us like supplies, go, and we were going there, and we were basically tending to the wounded because it is, and it kind of gives you a different perspective when you see helpless, defenseless people who are not armed. Who are being beaten by security forces, military forces, being shot, being, hurt. And all we can do is just like provide some medical attention. And it kind of gives you a perspective to see how humanity sometimes can show its most ugly face.
And the suppression of free speech, freedom of expression.
Yeah.
The ability of people to say what they honestly feel about a situation.
Yes.
And the suppression of people's basic rights to freedom.
Absolutely, yeah. And that kind of like taught me a lot and inspired me to do the show. But,
Well, you start, I mean, it's a crazy story, this, and I want to tell it because you just decide to do 5-minute stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you are expecting a few people to watch it. And then literally it just flies, and suddenly you're getting millions of people watching this. And very quickly, one of the big networks comes in, and then you're suddenly doing this stuff for 30 to 40 million people.
Yeah.
Like a third of the entire population of Egypt is tuning in to watch it. You're the biggest star of Egyptian television.
Oh, please.
But you were.
Don't stop.
Somebody, I mean, what an extraordinary thing, though, for a heart surgeon to go from helping protesters medically in Tahrir Square at the start of the Arab Spring to within a year, you're the biggest star on Egyptian television. It's a crazy thing.
It doesn't sound as glamorous.
Stop, dude. Why? Dude, this is so dumb. Anyone who knows they have a fucking moment of opportunity in fucking Western media in front of such a large audience knows that the goal is to fucking talk about Palestinians, talk about Palestinians, talk about Palestinians. Stop glazing yourself up, man. Holy shit. I think he's very good. I think he's very good at talking about the situation on the ground. But it's like, fuck. Just explain how the media people become the highlight of the news and transition into glazing each other. Yeah, I know. I hate this.
Well, many reasons.
This is why I did not want to fucking have a conversation with Piers Morgan about like propaganda or who's a propagandist or whatever. Not because like, oh, it's an indefensible position. No, I love debating. No matter how much I fucking abhor debate purgatory, I debate for fucking hours. Okay? I'm stubborn as shit. I'm a stubborn motherfucker. It's just that right now, this is a idiotic fucking time to talk about it. It's selfish.
It was a warrant for my arrest, and then I turned myself in, and I was interrogated. And it was the funniest interrogation ever. And in my stand-up shows, I talk about that scene.
Because the guards were reading the stuff out and laughing, right?
Well, the guards were taking selfies with me, which is funny. Right. the exchange between me and the prosecutor, general prosecutor, was extremely funny. I mean, I don't like to victimize myself. I don't like, oh, look at that. I actually like to find humor.
But why were you arrested? What was the criteria?
Oh, yeah. I think the list was insulting Islam, insulting the president, spreading false rumors, and disrupting the fabric of society. And it was, I think the people in the room didn't know what to do with me because they ended up discussing my jokes. So it turned into a writer's room. And I was kind of like, how do you think we make this funnier? And it was the funniest exchange ever. And after 6 hours, I was let go. And
was it scary, though, at the same time, that suddenly the machinery was getting a grip of you? Because it was to get a lot scarier. But was it in that moment when you first got arrested, you thought, I'm being arrested for breaching my freedom of speech, right?
For some reason,
oh my God,
I just like went with the flow. I went to the interrogation wearing the big hat. I went to the show. It was.
I don't want to talk about like internal Egyptian politics, okay? And I have stopped short of discussing like Bassem Youssef's own personal perspective on Egyptian politics in general. I hate that like there's a Israel at war ticker on the bottom of the fucking show and they're just like talking about this shit. Hasan, the interview is 2 hours. You got to chill. I know, but this is the most important part of the interview. This is the part that people watch. And the part that people watch is just like his background.
Interesting story, because the first episode that was aired after the removal of the Muslim Brotherhood, everybody was waiting to see what I would say. Because by that time...
Well, now he's talking about it. Okay, never mind.
Like me and Islamic Channel, like it's like they had 5 channels and they were like me and them going like that. They had like 5 channels that have only 1 hour a week. And then they were removed. And then a lot of the other dissident voices were also being shut down. Now, people are waiting. What will Bassem say?
Yeah,
and
what will he say?
On the day that the show aired,
I know what
the
he
next
said.
day I went out and everybody's like, good, at least somebody is speaking. It was a very controversial episode. Nobody liked it. And yet everybody liked it. Because people said like, you're supporting the coup. No, you're the Muslim Brotherhood. Everybody accused me of something. All I did in that episode was just being a mirror of what is happening in the street and showing them how ridiculous it is.
You didn't take a fixed position.
Well, my position, depending on what's your position?
What did you intend your position to?
My position was to show the ridiculousness of how the people now was like, oh, we got rid of Islamic fascism, but we are heading towards another fascism. There was a song that I did that was very controversial. People, and it's very funny. The pro-Muslim Brotherhood thought that this is a disrespect to the people who died, and on the other side, the people said that this is a disrespect to the army. And when you manage to offend everybody, you know you're right.
Yes.
Oh
And
my
then the people in the
God.
middle, it's like, oh, you weren't tough enough. And I was told, that's like, why didn't you go after? The ceiling of freedom just went down, and I was just like, it was very difficult. It is very difficult to go against an authority that was very popular at the time.
And especially a military authority with
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of experience
Oh yeah.
of weaponizing these situations.
Yeah.
You had death threats.
People would always choose, most of the time, they will always choose the military form rather than the religious form, because they kind of like, at least they are not infringing on my personal freedom. Not yet. But
you had threats on your life, didn't you?
oh, all the time. I don't talk about that because like I have been having death threats, like never stopped since 2011. Never stopped.
Have they continued since our last interview?
Oh yeah, they never stop.
People threatening to kill you.
All the time.
Why? For what reason?
Oh, for just saying something that they don't like. Oh, because you are against Egypt, you're against Islam, you're against our...
The problem is the guy that was fucking overthrown was a popularly elected Muslim Brotherhood guy. And the issue is that he was overthrown with a violent military coup. Okay. And the violent military coup that took place, that also killed a shit ton of fucking protesters, as a matter of fact, was conducted by U.S. aligned forces that were supposedly fucking liberal. Oh, what the fuck? What's going on? Is there an ad break? What? They just hit us with a commercial break. The problem always is that Sisi, who they now have, was a high-ranking official in the security forces. Yeah. The problem is always that your vote for Islamic Brotherhood? No way. No. The issue always, when it comes to affairs in other countries, is that it is more complex than the way you understand it. It doesn't matter. Like anything and everything that people do, if it does not serve America's interests, will always be used against them. So the people always are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Mosher was only popular amongst Muslim Brotherhood members, and people wanted him out, but didn't want another military piece of shit, but the revolution got hijacked. This has happened time and time again this has happened in Turkey as well. This happens everywhere. It's a constant. It's a constant in places like Turkey as well. It's a constant in places like Iran as well. You have Western influence that creates a lot of anger and resentment in the population, a lot of death and destruction at the behest of Western-backed leadership that causes people to find emancipation in the most reactionary forces, in the most reactionary groups, in the most reactionary ideologies, okay? Like Iran is right there. It is a perfect representation of this. It is seen as an anti-Western force. And of course, they are brutal. Of course, they are theocratic. Of course, they're awful. Not a single person, not a single leftist, for example, living in Iran will tell you otherwise. Like, nobody wants to live under a theocratic dictatorship, okay? Nobody. It's not great. You can't have a democratic process if you're constantly fucking waging war against the most important, most powerful military machine on the planet.
With your lawyer said you got to get out of it. You got to get out of Egypt. It's getting too dangerous.
Yeah.
Something bad's going to happen. You're going to get arrested again and probably thrown in jail, or you're going to try and kill you. And you flee to Dubai, and then you end up here in America.
Yes.
Was that always the plan, to eventually come to America, or was it expediency because of what happened?
Well, it's funny that you said that, because I visited the United States after the first year of my show. And a doctor that's there, an Egyptian doctor, has been there for a while. I said, listen, Bassem, you are very visible in the media, and I think you can use that to apply for a green card as a special talent. And I did. And it's like, I have like a huge show in Egypt.
It's actually the criteria, because I have the same.
Yeah.
Is an alien of exceptional ability.
Yes.
Is what they call you.
Yes, we're
charmingly.
Yes, we're very
We're
exceptional.
exceptionally able aliens.
We are, but we're still aliens.
Yeah, yeah. I know. It always makes me laugh. Like, you can come here, but you are an alien.
You're an alien, but you're exceptional.
Yeah.
And I just applied for it, and I got it. I got the time 100. That helped both from my application. I said, maybe I'm not going to use it. And then when that happens, the green card came handy. So a lot of people think that I'm here on asylum. I'm not. It was just a strike of luck.
You now do stand-up. You've done it for 5 years. And fascinatingly, you do some of it for an Arab audience.
You have a whole show in Arabic and
an English-speaking version.
Yes.
And they're probably very different, right?
Totally
because
different.
Different sensibilities, different humor, different crowds, different expectation.
Yes. Well, when the Arab audience come to my show, they expect that's going to be another version of my show that I did in Egypt. And I said, no, it's my personal story. Even then, this weekend, right before I met you, because of our interview, I sold out Arizona.
Really?
Yes. And I stood, and the first.
Oh my God, I don't like this. This shit gives me more respect for commentators like you didn't flinch from the topics and weeks. Yeah, I don't think that this is like. Do you want to know how little anyone cares about Egypt? Check this: the Rabaa massacre. Yeah, on August 14th, 2013, the Egyptian police, and to a lesser extent the armed forces, under the command of then Defense Minister Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, dispersed 2 camps of protesters in Cairo, one at the Al-Nahda Square and a larger one at the Rabaa al-Adawiya Square, the 2 sites that had been occupied by supporters of President Mohamed Morsi, who had been removed from office by a military little over a month earlier following mass protests against his rule. Initiatives to end the 6-week sit-ins by peaceful means had failed, and the camps were cleared out within hours. Human Rights Watch described the sit-in dispersals as crimes against humanity and called them one of the world's largest killings of demonstrators in a single day in recent history, in reference to the numerous deaths that occurred. The exact death toll during the incident is unclear, and multiple sources have given conflicting estimates. Human Rights Watch states that at least 904 protesters were killed, 817 in Rabaa Square and 87 in Al-Nahda Square, while strongly suggesting that at least 1,000 protesters died during the dispersal. The Egyptian Health Ministry announced that 593 protesters and 43 police officers were killed, and at least 3,994 individuals were injured. I will not be showing you the actual photos. Oh, they do have some of the casualty photos. Okay. The background is, following the 2011 Egyptian revolution, which ousted Hosni Mubarak, and subsequent instability, mass protests calling for the resignation of President Mohamed Morsi culminated in the 2013 Egyptian coup d'etat. Prior to the anti-Morsi uprising, supporters of the deposed president occupied 2 squares, Rabaa al-Adawiya in Nasser City in Cairo and Al-Nahda in Giza, originally to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of his presidency, but from the 3rd of July onwards to protest his ouster, vowing to remain there until Morsi was reinstated. Authorities delayed clearing the 2 protest camps as internal and external reconciliation Reconciliation processes were established to attempt to resolve this crisis peacefully. According to the military, the sit-ins were flashpoints for outbreaks of violence and bloody confrontations among pro-Morsi and anti-Morsi demonstrators and security forces. Oh, they're on Palestine now? Okay, let's talk. All right, let's get back to this. We'll cover Egyptian politics and how important it is to Palestinian politics again.
You, okay? This time I'm ready for the humor.
Oh, you're ready, okay.
No, but it's interesting because last time I was very taken aback. And I remember thinking, as you were doing this right off the top, I remember feeling very uncomfortable, unusually uncomfortable, and thinking I didn't know how to react to that. I didn't know whether I was supposed to laugh or be silent, and I sort of ended up sort of slightly grimacing.
Doesn't mean his takes on Palestine are wrong. They're not.
And I realized it was very powerful what you were doing. It was satirical, but it was savagely satirical and extremely effective. And that's why I think the interview did so well.
You know why? Because all I did was just take the talking points that's been in the media, not just for after October 7th, all through the conflict. It's always like, we need to kill it. All right. You need to kill 5? No, kill 10. You need to kill some? No, kill all. This is what satire does. It take reality, flip it on its head, exaggerate it, and then you can see how sometimes very uncomfortable and even sometimes stupid that sounds. Because I was just reacting to whatever the media is telling me. It's like, oh yeah, okay, do it. There's no pushback. So suddenly, the person who was proposing the most extreme measures is like, oh, we'll take it. Oh no, that's too much. So that was like a very simple technique. I just took the talking point and just exaggerated.
It was devastatingly effective, I thought. Yeah. First, before we go any further, how is your wife's family? Because she is half Palestinian.
Yeah.
Are they okay?
They're good. They're good. They are safe for now.
Yeah.
And as like that last week, there was no internet, as you have.
Yes.
You know, I saw you tweet at the IDF. It's like, how can they know?
You know how many views that tweet's had? Nearly 40 million.
Yeah.
Me just saying, how are they going to see this message if you've cut the internet off?
Yeah.
Activists who led the revolution in 2011 protested again after Morsi insisted he had powers that the Constitution didn't give him. The rule of law wasn't honored, and this conflict led to the military taking advantage of the situation. There's a lot of context that the Wikipedia article can't give.
That tweet I did was enormous, as everything is in this thing. And I had a lot of people say, finally, Piers, you get it, right? Finally, you get it. And I wanted to say, listen, I'm trying to reach a place where I get this, but it's an incredibly complicated issue for someone who is not Arabic or Jewish to poke their head into. And I've had to cover it as a journalist for a long, long time. I think I said to you before that I was editor of the Daily Mirror in England when we opposed the Iraq War, for example. So, you know, I have taken stands on this thing. On this one, I find, and I'm going to be completely straight with you, I discussed this with Jordan Peterson.
I don't think the Israeli apartheid regime is complicated, but if you're going to talk about Egypt, it is certainly more complicated.
And he was actually very self-reflective about that in the interview we did this week, where he later issued a 20-minute video because he said sometimes a one-line tweet can be unnecessarily inflammatory to people. Much better to take time to explain it. Here's where I've got to with this conflict now. I viewed what happened on October the 7th as an absolutely appalling atrocity, a terror attack of unimaginable horror. And I absolutely think that Israel has a right to defend itself from the people who committed it, Hamas. And I've questioned for the last 3-4 weeks, what is a proportionate response? And I have said repeatedly, I don't know the answer. I want people who have a view to have a view about that. And I'll ask you again about where you think we are with this. I also acknowledge that Hamas live amongst civilian population in Gaza. And therefore, if you do what the Israelis are currently doing, which is a ground offensive into Gaza, a lot of civilians are going to get killed. And at what point does that become disproportionate or even illegal? And I don't know the answers to those questions. And I have a moral quandary because my instinct is to say that Israel has no choice but to respond to what happened in a very forceful manner. I understand why they want to eliminate Hamas altogether. I understand that if they feel they can, then perhaps we can move to a two-state solution or peace or whatever it may be, although I don't think Netanyahu will ever be the person to do that. But the moral question for me is, at what point does this become disproportionate? And when you see thousands of children being killed in Gaza, it fills me with utter horror. And then people say, well, do you condemn it? And I find it very easy to condemn Israel turning off the water, Israel turning off the power. I think it's terrible what's happening in the West Bank with the settlers. I think that the stuff there is completely easy to condemn. But can I, hand on heart, condemn Israel trying to destroy Hamas after what they did on October the 7th? That is where I'm struggling to find myself saying I condemn it, because I believe that they are right to try and destroy Hamas. Now, what do you feel about my moral quandary?
Well, there's a lot of points, very lot, and I think this will kind of like lead the ground rules for that interview. There is the whole thing about like, is the right to defend itself, the condemnation. First of all, let's start with condemnation.
Yes.
You want my opinion?
Yes.
Condemning Hamas or condemning Israel?
Yes.
Completely useless. Completely useless.
Why?
I condemn Hamas, you condemn Israel, interview is over. What happened? Nothing. It is just checkpoint, like morality checkpoints.
But I've interviewed a lot of pro-Palestinians, for example, some of whom will immediately say, I unreservedly condemn the terror attacks of October the 7th, and then go on to criticize Israel. And I think that's it's a position I can completely respect.
Yeah.
But I find it much harder to respect a pro-Palestinian guest on my show if they simply resolutely refuse to say that they can condemn the terror attacks.
Yes.
I find that less...
I like that he's just fucking turning around and using Bassem Youssef after glazing him to fucking shit on previous guests that he's had.
One thing that I have noticed, not just on the coverage of these events,
now they can get together and be like,
before, every time this starts, people say, we don't know what's happening. It's a very complicated situation.
Right.
What is happening now? And for me, as a viewer, if a conflict that's been there for 75 years and the media with all this technology has been covering it and we hear the same exact words, we don't know what's happening. It's complicated. It's a very complex, that is a failure of the media apparatus. That is the failure to themselves and for the audience, because why every time this happens, it seems like it is happening from point zero. And I think to help understand that, I will get to the October 7th. I will get to the condemnation. I will get to the self-defense. But I think maybe we can we have like all the time in the world, and we can discuss, this interview could be a bookmark, landmark for maybe looking at that conflict in a deeper way that nobody had gone there before. We have the views, we have people waiting.
Yes.
You know, as I said, I'm the least qualified to discuss that, but it's an opportunity to use it.
I'm not massively well qualified myself.
Yeah, both of us.
I'm
look at us.
I'm an Irish Catholic, right?
Look at us. Yeah, two privileged people. One white, one white wannabe, discussing the most complex conflict of our history. But
Youssef literally just called it moral grandstanding checkboxing. He isn't agreeing with them. Yeah, I mean, he isn't. I think it would be quite difficult for someone like Bassem Youssef to just like sit there and here's the thing. Even if you're an Arab liberal, even if you're an Egyptian liberal, okay, even if no matter what your perspective is, if there's one issue that unites everyone, it is that the bloodshed that Palestinians have withstood is completely and utterly unimaginable. Like, his wife directly is Palestinian. His wife's family are in Gaza. That gives him a point of personal connection to the atrocities. Okay? So no matter what happens, I don't know why there's like this fucking weird ad break that cut in the middle of this conversation. But that's what it is. It doesn't matter what his like own personal perspective is. It doesn't matter what he said in Egypt, for example. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what his perspective was on the coup that took place or how violent it was. This is no matter what happens on this issue, he's always going to have moral clarity. It's very difficult for him not to. I agree the glaze up is annoying, but it might just be only some way viewers can humanize Arabs and Palestinians for once. I don't know. I think it just basically it improves his like liberal credentials. That's what happened in that situation. Here's viewers dropped from 50K to 25K. Those first 10 minutes ruined it. It's so strange when Westerners talk about Arabs as if they are a singular culture, ethnicity, and language. Yes, it is by design. It is Islamophobia. If you think all Jews are a monolith, you are an anti-Semite. If you think all Arabs are a monolith, Well, then you're just every other person in America, okay? All Arabs and all Muslims, as a matter of fact, are a monolith. All members, all countries in the MENA region, they're all monolithic. They're all operating under the same interest. They all fucking love one another, and they all are anti-Semitic and hate Israel, and that's it. What the fuck is happening here? What are these goddamn ads? Can we compare the 2011 Egyptian coup to the 2016 Turkish coup attempt, or do you think Erdogan can orchestrate such an event to gain more power? I highly think he agreed with Turkish military supremacists in Turkey after that and changed his politics the other way around. Do you think Egypt would be like Turkey now? I think you can compare the Egyptian coup to the 2016 attempt, but I mean, in the way that I don't know. I don't want to get into this right now. We'll talk about it a little bit more. If you say us atheists are monolithic, I swear to God. Okay, good one. I don't know why there's still this many ads happening here. I can tell you lots of Egyptians have mixed feelings about him. Lots of people are angry with him, but applaud him for using his relative fame standing up to Palestine. We'll see where this goes. As you guys know, I'm not a fan of Erdogan, but I've told you before.
Anti-Semitism.
Yes.
America's involvement in Turkey in the coup that happened, if it had actually succeeded, Turkey would be in a much worse position overall if Fethullah Gülen was able to seize power, an American puppet who's an Islamist himself, and maybe even a worse Islamist than Erdogan, as a matter of fact. If one could even imagine such a thing.
And I think it is very important to agree on the language, because the word anti-Semite has been used and abused, and most of the time not for the good interest of the Jewish people. Because the first 2 days of the coverage, I watched the news, and there was a lot of protest that was led by Jewish Voice for Peace. And they were led by people who opposed the Israeli attack on the civilians. And I remember quite well, many of the Republican representatives in Congress came out and they were calling these the global intifada, the global jihad. I love it when they say jihad. They sound like a horse. Jihad. It's very funny. Or they say, like, these are, and I quote, Iranian-backed jihadists. And I said, wait a minute, but most of those people are Jewish. Those people who took over the Capitol, the same people who took over Central Station in New York, which is known as the biggest civil disobedience event in America in the last 2 decades, they were all Jewish. And then I find Nikki Haley saying anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. And then I remember, it's like, oh, Jewish people in America are saddled by the fact that they are not citizens of America or citizens of the world, but they are citizens of Israel, and they have to back Israel in whatever they do. And these are not my words. These are the words of Jon Stewart. He went down and he said it's very, very important to divide these two. And what is very, very interesting...
Would you compare that, on that specific point, to the way that people try and say all Palestinians are responsible and accountable for what Hamas do?
Yes, yeah.
In other words, I think you can be very critical of Israeli...
What is happening?
And their policies.
Yes.
Is he understanding?
Netanyahu and the politicians.
What's going on?
That doesn't mean that you have to take that criticism to innocent Israelis who may have exactly the same criticism.
Oh my God!
And this
Piers
is why
Morgan.
it's very important to have these kinds
He's
of
evolving. He's learning.
The funniest, not the funniest, the saddest thing that I saw is the people that were in so much support of Israel are anti-Semite themselves.
Yes.
MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, she said, like, oh, I send my aides, and they took pictures of the protesters. Basically, she's surveilling protesters. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is very known for a very famous post in 2018 where she blamed the California fires on a Jewish space laser gun. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? It's just like, oh, they were burned because Jewish investors, Rothschild and Feinstein, anything that ends with Stein, because that's, of course, sounds Jewish, they put a satellite and shooting laser beams to... It's
possible.
And not just her. You have Steve Skoulas, thank you so much. He is now the Speaker of the House, and he has been invited before for an organization that was funded by David Duke, the founder of the KKK. You have Kevin McCarthy, who is the former minority speaker, leader of the Republican Party in the House, and he accused Jewish billionaires of rigging the midterm. So how come those people are accusing us of anti-Semites? So here's the thing. So let's go to the equation that Nikki Haley put on Twitter. Anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. No, it is true. People who hate Jews, they're also anti-Zionists. It is true. And you could be someone who hate Zionists, who don't like Zionism, and you are Semite. You could even be Jewish. And guess what? You could be a Zionist, like those people, supporting Israel, and at the same time you hate the Jews, because the chant, Jews will not replace us. These echoed in Charlottesville. It did not echo in Gaza. I mean, in Gaza they say worse stuff in between the bombing on their downtime. And these are the same people who are seen with Nick Fuentes, with
Donald Trump,
with Stephen Bannon. And you know what's most
Donald Trump
interesting?
had him for dinner at Mar-a-Lago.
And all of those people are buddies with Benjamin Netanyahu. So how does this work? How does this work? And you know the people who speak against this, like Jon Stewart, like Bernie Sanders, like Naomi Klein? What do they call these people? What do they call them?
Self-hating Jews.
Hating Jews. And you know what else now they call them? They call them capus. Capus. You know what's capus? Capus, basically these were the Jewish inmate in Auschwitz that were forced by the Nazis to stand as guards on their own inmates. You see how degrading this is. And this is the way to shut down conversation. Anti-Semite, Islamophobe, you hate America, you hate the military, you hate Egypt, war on Christmas. This is how you shut an environment that does not allow disagreement is not an environment made for growth. It's an environment made for control.
Let me ask you this. Say, take the student protests in America, at universities.
I think he would do he's doing a much better job than I would because he's liberal. I think for as broad an audience as possible, liberalism, like tackling this issue from a liberal perspective is much better.
Hours, which were clearly deeply, deliberately inflammatory and hurtful to Jewish people. Secondly, I have a real problem with the students who were beaming direct pro-Hamas slogans onto buildings on campuses in America. You know, I'm all for free speech, and I really am. The whole show is predicated on that. But not to the point where you see Jewish students barricaded into libraries because a mob is descending on them. There is a distinction to me between people who are obviously overtly, I mean, there was a professor at Cornell University who was literally seen in public shouting how exhilarated he felt by the attacks of October the 7th. He still hasn't been fired, that guy. I think that crosses a line. Do you?
Yeah, I do not like this way. I mean, I can understand why, but I don't condone it. I would never, because you have to understand these people, again, I'm not supporting them. I just want to make sure about two things. The reason that I started with anti-Semitism, because I wanted to make sure to clear any confusion that when I speak about Israel, I'm speaking about Israel.
Yes.
When I'm speaking about Jewish people, I'm speaking about Jewish people.
Yes.
When I speak with my Zionists, I speak with my Zionists. It was very... Because
I think it was very powerful that you did that.
Yeah, I have to be careful.
That's the first thing you did, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, but at the same time, when I tell you why does that happen, it doesn't mean that I condone it. There's a difference between explanation and justification. Those people who are exhilarated, the way that they... This is the same reason why people were so happy about the interview. What do they see? They see Israel as a criminal state who is killing their people, and at the same time, they are supported by the international community in America. They have no guns, they have no superpower backing them. All they have is just feeling of happiness, like, yes, our enemies that we cannot touch them has been hurt. All they can think about, that these are their enemies that have been hurt, right? I'm not condoning this, but again, like when people were celebrating terrorist attacks, you know, against Western targets. Of course, I don't condone that. But why? Because those people has been, from a very young age, what have they seen? They're not being heard by the media. The plight and the suffering of their brothers in Israel, in Palestine, in the Arab world are not being heard. People in Iraq, you know, like when America and Britain invaded Iraq, right? What the Arabs saw? It's like two superpowers are coming in on just regular people. So whenever there was like a bomb or like an attack on American troops, people would
starving
celebrate.
refugee tents, they started digging Hamas tunnels through cement with bare hands.
Very inflammatory, and it is not
Good one,
right.
dude. You got it.
Those people had nothing else. All they can is just like shout All they say is like to rejoice. It is not right. Again, I'm explaining why is this happening, because it's like, yeah, if I cannot get you, I'm just gonna scratch your eyes. I'm gonna scratch your eyes because you've been beating me all the time, and you have the whole international community backing you up, and all I can do is scream. Is it right? No. But it is understandable. Again, it's not the right thing. But no, it's not like understandable. It's like, oh, no. But again, it is an explanation.
This is hard for people to understand. They don't get it. They don't get it. They will never get it. You run ads like a capitalist? Yes, I do. I am, dude. I am. I love capitalism. Yum, yum, yum. Yummy, yummy, yummy. What changed? Question I always ask people is, what changed? Okay, let's say I'm a capitalist and I advocate for the exact same things that I'm advocating for. Okay. Do you have an argument to the things that I'm advocating for? Or now do you still just say, well, you're fucking bad at capitalism? Like, what are you going to say? This is why, like, hypocrisy baiting is so stupid. When you try to, like, it's very effective as a rhetorical tool, but it's very stupid. Okay? I can defend a position that I don't believe in as well, if you would like, and you would not be able to make this like, oh, well, you're hypocritical argument in that situation, right? It's also not exactly hypocritical anyway, but it doesn't matter, you know? Is this chatter now anti-capitalist because you got money? Yeah. You don't got no capital. Here you are defending capitalism. You ain't got no capital, motherfucker. So why are you defending capitalism then? You got no capital and you got no bitches. Here you are, bitchless and devoid of any capital whatsoever. Yeah, motherfuckers think they buy like some Tesla stock and think, oh shit, that's it. That's it, boys. Passive income time. Thinking that they fucking have any say whatsoever. Not the classiest point, but yeah, true, lol. That's my point. It's like, even if I myself am I don't know, even if you think I'm like a capitalist, sure, whatever, who cares? Yeah, I'm a capitalist. Just like most people in the Western world. Okay, what changed? What changed in my analysis? You know what I mean? Nothing. So address the actual points rather than just like looking for hypocrisy. Especially because, like, let's say I'm a capitalist and I'm actually engaging in anti-capitalist sentiment. Okay? Let's say I'm a capitalist and engaging in anti-capitalist sentiment. I'm a class trader. Okay? Okay, well, I still have money. You, on the other hand, are advocating against your best interest and you don't have money. Advocate for your best interest.
Rejoicing for the death of innocent civilians in Israel. This is what have the Arabs seen for years on the Arab world. For example, if you look up Sidrot cinema, this is in 2014 when Israel was bombing Gaza.
Explain how racist some people are.
The Israelis in the Sidrot, the kibbutz or the settlement, they went on a hill and they had popcorn and they had drinks and they were like watching the show and they were cheering with every rocket coming down. This is what we see. Western people didn't see that.
Well, somebody found a tweet actually of mine from 2014 in which I said, at what point does what Israel is currently doing to the Palestinian people become terrorism? And because I've always said, you know, I've spoken about this a lot over the years, and I've always tried to be extremely fair-minded, albeit nobody really wants you to be fair-minded. They want you to take a side.
It's pretty funny that like having the most tepid criticism against like Israel's apartheid regime is seen as like a peace-loving dove.
I know what you mean.
That's how that's what the standard is. The standard has already been set.
This is like a Jewish wedding.
Like he's just such a normal. That's such a normal way to ask, like a normal ass question to ask.
To be clear, I've seen lots of video
No, but like,
clips.
I'm not talking to you, Piers.
No, I know.
I'm talking to the Western audience because I want to see like I want to say like this is what they see. I mean, for example, there is a very famous video for Samer Abu Za'anin, who is like a young kid that he was shot point blank by an Israeli soldier, and he was not allowed to have any medical attention. And as his dead body was being put into the ambulance, the Jewish settlers were cheering. So for an Arab audience, this is what we see every day.
Yep.
So when they see, oh, we heard them back, we heard their people like they heard back, it is not right. But this is what hate does. It escalates, it feeds each other. Radicalism feeds it. It is terrible, and it is just like a vicious circle. So I would like to do something that is very interesting tonight. When I invited Jon Stewart to my show, as much of like a reception that if you see on the YouTube, people just like
No, sorry.
we had to cut the 5-minute standing ovation for broadcast. People was on their feet for 5 minutes. They could not believe it. I remember John Stewart telling me I could never imagine that a Jewish guy from New Jersey would have that kind of reception in Cairo.
That's so okay. Jon Stewart, classic New Jersey mentality. That's anti-Arab sentiment baked into the minds of every single person, no matter how fucking woke they are. Why wouldn't they?
Do something very
Why wouldn't they celebrate you?
I want to give. I like telling stories, and I'm going to tell you a very nice story.
Tell
and
away.
This is the story, surprise, surprise, of the suffering and the plight of the Jewish people. And I want to say that because it is very interesting when you see the trauma and the suffering that the people on the other side went through, you might understand why they're coming. So this is, see this? This is a map of all of the history of the expulsion of the Jews.
Yo! Okay,
dude.
dude. Okay, I'm gonna say it. He watches the
And
show.
of course, this comes back to the, the whole idea about the original sin that you have.
Pull the map out.
Betrayed Jesus Christ.
Reframe it. Talk about the fucking anti-Semitism baked into Christianity.
At that time, Jewish people were not allowed to own land. They were just peasants. Even some of the professions they were not even allowed to participate in. But they were allowed to do one thing.
Did my video on this come out already?
It was prohibited
I
by
was
the
trying to get my
Catholic Church
editors to
engage
pump
in.
that out.
So what happens when you work in money? You get rich.
Not out yet. Never
right?
mind.
And those Jews lived in ghettos. Now, ghettos was not just like isolated neighborhoods in cities. Sometimes ghettos were outside the city. This is like how isolated they were. And in those ghettos, they have to pay gold to the mayor or the governor or the prince or the noble. So they would see, you're getting richer. I need more taxes. So they pay tax. What happens when you have a business and they increase your rent? You increase your service, increase the taxes. So what happened? The Christians started to default. And suddenly, the image of the greedy Jew was created. Shylock, merchant of Venice. This was the kind of oppression that the Jewish people went through. Fast forward 19th century, there was like the Eastern Jew in Ukraine and Russia, and there was the Western Jews in Europe. Those people in the Eastern Jews had to immigrate because there were pogroms and they were like, kicked out. And at a certain point, the people in the West, especially in England, it's like, there are too many Jews. We need a solution. The solution for what? For the Jewish problem. So it's like we need to get rid of them. And you know what? Palestine was not even in the A list. Palestine was in the B list. Because England proposed 6,000 square miles in Uganda for the Jews, 1903. And the reason why Palestine was not on the list, that it was objected by a lot of rabbis that said, like, it's a promised land, but only when the Messiah comes. But there were other options, Argentina, South Africa, Uganda, Madagascar. And eventually, they said, all right, let's do Palestine. So they went to Palestine in 1914. There was 700,000 people living in Palestine, 3% were Jewish. 1917, Balfour Declaration. Arthur Balfour, he called the Jewish people in England that they are alien and hostile race. And the thing is, the only Jewish member of the parliament, of the English parliament, Lord Montenegro, he objects, like, these are British citizens, we should not kick them out.
Yeah.
So they pushed them, but it was not going fast enough. Came the Nazis. And then it was not about the solution anymore. It was the end losing, the final solution by Hitler, because he needed an answer for the Jewish question, the Judefrage. And then, as you see, the Holocaust happened, the most orchestrated, industrialized, horrible genocide in our modern time. 6 million Jews died. So it accelerated, and they went. First of all, they left Eastern Europe, and they went to West Europe, and they went to America, and they were turned down, and they were pushed towards Palestine. So by 1948, right before the declaration of the State of Israel, there were 2 million people living there. Only 30% of them was Jews. So the whole idea of like a land without a people to a people without a land was a marketing thing. They were already Palestinians. So suddenly, overnight, 1948, there were 1.5 million Palestinians. Half of them, 3/4 of them were overnight pushed into refugees.
Yeah.
And this is why it's called the Nakba, the catastrophe. So now we have all of this building up into the minds. And suddenly this was like a conflict, a hate, a problem that we didn't have to do anything with. This was basically pushed on us by the Europeans. You see, this is why it is important to say that. And I'm not saying that just like, oh, let's wipe out the state of Israel, let's like push them in the sea. No, but it's important when you talk about the conflict that you talk about the root causes, right? No, there was like a vibrant Palestinian culture happening over there, and right now they are erasing this culture. Suddenly, I'm thinking of like Israeli feta cheese. Israeli hummus. Oh, that's an insult. Israeli hummus. Come on. I mean, take the land, but leave the hummus, man. I mean, come on. I mean, that's not fair. You are someone who's always spoken against culture, cancel culture. Right now, a whole culture is canceled.
Yeah, Israeli hummus is one that strikes at the fucking heart of many people. It's like, are there Arab Jews? Of course there are, but hummus. But they don't love hummus because they're Jewish. They love hummus because they're Arab. Is this video about the Rabah massacre? Okay, we'll take a look at it. They love hummus because it's the bomb. I mean, it's the best. No, I will never condemn hummus. I love hummus. Dude actually converted Piers Morgan with that conversation. No, I think Piers Morgan is like over the course of many weeks now. I think like he's I wouldn't say he's like an honest person by any means, okay? I think he's a clout guy. I think he knows that there's a lot of people in the Arab world that watch when he has on people who are pro-Palestine. It's an avenue that is not like very well represented, but I think in that process maybe he's just like changed his opinion a little bit. Like I feel weird handing it to him in under any circumstance. Okay, I feel weird handing it to him. It's like handing it to the top of the hour ad break. You know what I mean? Comes at the top of the hour. If you no longer want to see the 3-minute ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Okay, here's the 3-minute ad break now. I'm gonna launch off of the ad break that they presented on Talk TV and give you mine. This man, a guy, has to be more well-versed in European history to explain problems in his part of the world while all these Western fuckers keep yapping without reading a single book about the Middle East. Yes, my friend, Schadenfreude, as you know, just as well as I do, that in order to actually fucking make a clear and coherent argument that cuts through the noise against the dominant media narratives, against the dominant cultural forces, you have to be, one, very careful. If you overstep or say something that can be misconstrued, they will immediately shove that down your fucking throat and belittle you. Think about how people have been saying that I am pro-Hamas and pro-baby killing and all this fucking nonsense, despite the fact that I have time and time again condemned it and have been very much anti-baby killing my entire media career, public media career. It does not matter. Two, in order to be able to like truly explain the developing attitudes, you also have to be at least relatively knowledgeable about the history of the region and what has happened throughout time.
Journalist for the Guardian newspaper. He wrote a very interesting column last week in which
that's why I always say it's fucking much easier to just like. It's much easier to basically say all Palestinians are terrorists, is Hamas. Some of these terrorists have to die. Sorry, sucks to suck. Because a lot of people already have Islamophobia.
And he was
they already have that narrative.
Sides unless you really understand the history. Would you agree with that? Would you agree that both sides have legitimate just cause? Not with the methodology that's taken place, and you've given an extremely detailed analysis of the build-up to what happened in 48. To me, it's pretty clear 700, 800,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homes, and it should never have happened. And that has been absolutely,
technically not overnight,
cause for so much resentment. But can you, at the heart of this debate, agree with Jonathan that you could argue there is just cause on both sides?
There is a cause on both sides, but I'm walking on a tightrope here because I'm not a Palestinian.
Yeah.
But from the Palestinian point of view, there's a lot of people. I mean, there are 2.2 million people.
Did you just say the Nakba was a just cause? Can you say it's a just cause?
There is 350,000 people living in East Jerusalem, and there is like 6 or 7 million people living outside. Those people, the Palestinians that were pushed out, they do not have the right to go back. Right now, if you meet Palestinians, you'll see them wearing a necklace with a key. That key is their house that they were kicked out from in Yafa and Haifa. You know, like my wife's family comes from Ramla, which is 50 miles from Gaza. And according to the law, those people have absolutely no right to go back. Even if you are a Palestinian with an American passport, they give you hell in order to go in. And yet, a Jewish person born anywhere in the world, born in Poland, born in Ukraine, no question asked, he can jump on a plane, land in Israel, and get the Israeli citizen and take a house that most probably belonged to a Palestinian. So it is not just like, it is an ongoing injustice that has been happening. Now, I mean...
Where would you criticize, if you're being fair-minded, where would you criticize from 48 onwards the behavior of the Arab side?
Well, put yourself in the Arab side. At 1948, you constituted 70% of the population. Suddenly, the UN is giving you 48% of the land, right? Not just that, I mean, the Arab regimes, because they did terribly, and see, this is the thing, like, Arab nationalism at the height of these people feed on each other, you know, because it's very, very important to have a problem. Oh, it's Israel, and then
what did I miss?
It's a very good distraction. I mean, sometimes I feel that like the Palestinian cause is very useful for both sides to stay there as a tension.
Did he do the classic like, well, the Jews were expelled thing?
And this is a very important question because in the mind of the
No, I'm not going to go back. I'll watch it later.
They always thought of the Palestinian resistance or the Palestinian side as like Islamic, as militant. No. As a matter of fact, some of the early suicide bombers were female Christian Palestinians because they, like the RIA, you know, they were fighting for a land. The whole idea of Islamization of the whole cause came very later. As a matter of fact, you will find this very interesting because when I saw this, I did not believe it.
Speak on it, motherfucker!
You know the Fatah movement, which is the PLO, the Fatah.
Of course.
This was their slogan. Can you see? You see there's a crescent, a cross, and a menorah. And they say unitary, democratic, non-sectarian. So basically in the 1960s, Fatah were basically marijuana-smoking, tree-hugger hippies. And yet that didn't work, right? And the thing is, I always hear that like Arabs were giving so many chances for peace. That is not true.
Yes!
As a matter of fact,
speak on it, motherfucker!
All along history, Israel didn't give an inch of land by peace.
And only took more land.
They gave back Sinai because Egypt like initiated the war. 2006, they went out of south of Lebanon because of the resistance they have. Even the disengagement of Gaza, they didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart because they had too much casualties. And even the Oslo Accords, the peace treaty, the one that Isaac Rabin and got the Nobel Prize for, they did it because of the Intifada. So what is the message that Israel is giving to the Arabs? I will never give you anything with peaceful resolution. You will always have to fight for it.
Do you not think that, for example, I mean, Bill Clinton feels this very strongly? That
Fuck
there
Bill
was
Clinton.
A great deal to be
Bill
done.
Clinton is suck my cock.
Just in the end.
Bitch ass motherfucker, lion ass, donkey.
To this place, there would be a deal. Just walked away. That was the closest that everybody came, and but actually, I mean, could Clinton have done any more than he tried to do then?
I am not, again, that's why it's very important to have people who are much more qualified than me to talk about this. But two things I can say about that. Number one, the whole thing about the Oslo Accord, there was a video for Netanyahu who was talking to the settlement offer in 2001, and he was bragging about sabotaging. He was talking to us like, I sabotage, it's like there was going to be no peace. Yeah, you've seen that, right? Yeah. And in that video, if you remember, when he was saying like you have to hit them hard, 2001, no Hamas at the time. They were talking about the Palestinian Authority. We have to hit them, we have to kill them, we have to make them feel the pain. And then one of them says like Bibi, but wouldn't America kind of just like, so what? The American public is easily manipulated. 80% are with us. It is absurd. And as a new American, where I can have the privilege of being retrospectively angry, I said like, this guy is mocking the government and the people who have been with him all the time. It's like, oh, they can be easily manipulated. They can do
arrogance.
Even, by the way, even Isaac Rabin.
Arrogance.
Isaac Rabin, the one who actually did the peace accord. He was known famously, said the way to actually beat those children is to break
Break their
bones with the
fucking
broken bones
hands.
policy.
Yes.
They will like get those kids and break their bones on the pavement. So this has the whole idea about like
No
Israel
peace-loving
wanted
dove.
peace and Arab
That
also wanted
motherfucker
to
wasn't a
fight
peace lover either.
is a very,
I
very
actually,
bad
I
And
actually
they
think
still
as
killed
as it's
him.
gone on, the genuine will on both sides for peace has not existed.
No.
I think it's been a deceit to the world
No, I'm sorry.
and to the relative groups of people on both sides.
The official
And actually a betrayal of them.
the official stand of the Palestinian Authority, and again, I cannot speak, I mean, it is very difficult to do this. The official stand of the Palestinian Authority is that we are just happy with 22% of the land. Just give us like that. Yes, there are people that dissent, but the thing is, you cannot just say, okay, let's talk about peace. And then you take away my land. Let's talk about peace. And there's a kind of like passive aggressiveness happening. Oh, let's talk about it, but I'm going to build settlements. I'm going to suffocate your cities and your villages.
See, I think that has been incredibly inflammatory.
Yes.
Worsening the situation. I think putting back the chance of peace. I mean, Netanyahu, I interviewed Netanyahu earlier this year in the middle of the big social protests in his own country. And I couldn't understand what he thought he was doing, except that it seemed to me political expediency, that he had to get power, again, he had put a bunch of right-wing headbangers into his cabinet who have incredibly bad records, speak in an incredibly incendiary way about Palestinians, for example. And that he did this for power. And then he launched, because they were pushing him to do it, a ridiculous assault on the integrity of the Supreme Court, the independence of the Supreme Court. And many Israelis rose up. So Netanyahu has become, to me, a big problem. Right? And the people, all the polling shows that. Israeli people are very unhappy with Netanyahu. I don't think he's ever going to actually want to forge peace. And in fact, I think he was
It's not just
instrumental with
Netanyahu.
Hamas
It's
in
not.
wanting to keep
This is
them.
Israel's official government
Because he felt
position.
that would create
Just
the
like
split
when
with
it
the
comes to
Palestinians. Yeah.
continuation
The two
of endless
groups,
war in the
and that
Middle
would be
East,
good for
it was
Israel.
America's
And it was
official
illegal
government
and
position
illegal,
until it was not.
in 2009.
It did not matter if it was Barack Obama or George W. Bush. Netanyahu is no different than other leaders in Israel in that regard. This
we can
includes
agree about Netanyahu.
Yitzhak Rabin as well.
There's a book.
And I would say most of his cabinet.
There's a book called The Fear of Peace. It's by Moshe Zimmerman. And he's an Israeli historian, and he said, like, the average Israeli citizen does not have a vision of peace. Because for 70 years, this is a country that has been, the war has been going on for, they have been expanding because of war, the military is taking over, so the whole idea of peace is not even there. It's not just Netanyahu. Like,
What's your opinion of Patrick Dye's situation at
I
Cornell
remember you
University?
have
Put him in jail,
interviewed,
bro. Put his
Naftali
bitch ass in
Bennett.
jail.
Yes.
And I think you tweeted that like that was like a very
Death threats.
Kind of reasonable
Anti-Semitic hate crime death
I don't
threats.
think that's
Put his bitch
unreasonable.
ass in jail.
Yeah, but like
Fuck you mean?
What's my
Naftali,
opinion? He went after Queen Rania,
Smoking on
and
it.
he called up shame on Queen Rania.
No, I didn't say reasonable. I just said this. I did a fire emoji.
Yeah, yeah.
I just said that what he was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you about Queen Rania, and let's ask about, since
Yeah.
you've raised it.
Yeah.
Because Queen Rania accused the West
No,
of
this is an issue
glaring
regarding
double standard.
singular Israeli leaders.
Says
It
the
might
first
have
time in
been all
modern
of them, but it has
history
nothing to
such
do with
human
Israeli
suffering,
state.
And the world is not even
Okay.
calling for a ceasefire. So the silence is deafening, and to many in our region, it makes the Western world complicit. Now, other people said, well, okay, if you feel that strongly, why aren't you taking in any Palestinians? Why is Egypt not taking Palestinians? Why does the Arab
The
world
grossest
want
fucking
to
take.
constantly attack Israel without actually offering any place to go for the Palestinians?
Imagine those fucking dogs in leadership are actually
that's
fucking
exactly
representative
what
of the people's
actually
opinion.
starts Third War III. This is the war solution. These are Palestinians. These are their lands, and then suddenly take them. Why? So they've been basically kicked around from their homes, and now another country should take them. You see what will happen? Imagine this. Now, and because Israeli official has been talking openly about this, it's like, why don't they just go in Sinai? Why they go? You know what would happen? Those people are going to be pushed in Sinai, and with any population, 2 million people, they are living in refugee camp. What do you think will happen? Unrest, chaos, and then after a few years, the Western media will come with their cameras, like, oh, look at those Arabs. Oh, they're killing each other. Oh, Israel is good that they got rid of them. And then they will go to the West Bank, and suddenly those 3.5 million people push into Jordan. The whole idea, why does Jordan take them? Why does Egypt take them? The same question. Europe has 44 countries. Why don't they take Israel? America has 50 states. Why don't they give them Florida? I mean, we seem to complain about Florida the whole time. Why don't they just like give Israel? The whole idea was like, oh, you're Arabs, you're all the same. No, no, no. Because what will happen then? So Israel will move into Jordan? That's like, oh, Saudi, why don't you take the Jordan?
What do you mean this guy smokes?
So
He says the exact.
This is not a solution. This is not a
He's been
solution.
saying the same shit I've been
I'm
saying.
not taking a position
Yeah.
either way. Let me ask you directly.
But I want to say something about what Queen Radia said.
Okay.
The whole idea about like the West.
Yeah.
I think that in 3 weeks, Israel morally corrupted the West like no other. I think the West will have a lot of time to recover because for years, the West has been telling us, oh, look, we're liberal. We're all about human rights. All are equal. Adopt our values. And then suddenly, well, you don't want to even to cease. We don't want to even tell Israel to stop. And suddenly we wake up and we find McDonald's are giving free meals to the Israeli because like nothing will make you feel better after killing a bunch of Palestinian kids than a happy meal. You know?
Then Happy Meals. Yeah, Bassem Youssef is a great communicator. Obviously, he's a fucking long. I mean, bro, he's been in media for almost as long as I've been alive. You know that, right? So of course, even though we say the same exact things overall, he going to be much better at saying it. All right, here, you guys have been wanting me to watch this clip real bad. Let's take a look.
But I can tell you that we are not targeting anyone else in Gaza but civilians. Hamas is cynically, but rather terrorists, of course. But I can tell you that we are not targeting anyone else in Gaza but civilians.
I mean, it's fucking. She said it. It's so funny because like this is a minor slip, right? No, it's not mask off. It's not. She fucked up. It's like when I accidentally say Hasanabi because I've heard it so many goddamn times. Except the reality for her is that is basically what they're fucking doing. It is what they're doing. So of course, it's just like a moment of honesty
but I
here.
can tell you that we are not targeting anyone else in Gaza but civilians. Hamas is cynically,
He's like, I could tell you with the certainty, we're not targeting anyone in Gaza except for the civilians. We're only killing civilians, dog.
But I can tell you that we are not targeting anyone else in Gaza but civilians. Hamas is.
Yeah, there it is. This happened with a former foreign minister too. I saw it today. Yes, bro, when you listen, there's two different voices, okay? Now, when you are on the foreign minister's office, your job is to communicate the Israeli position in like liberal terms, right? To a broader audience in the West. You are speaking in Hebrew, that message is usually to an Israeli audience. Okay, when you're speaking in English, that message is to the Western world. What ended up happening is you crossed your wires a little bit, okay? I mean, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a fucking example. I'll give you a great one. Like the former like deputy or whatever of the Interior Ministry, she came out and very openly said it. She straight up came out and was like, yesterday was like, where is it? Let me see if I can find it. Jordan Uni follows you? What do you mean Jordan Uni? This is Jordan Ewell. I'm trying to figure out if I can find the fucking... oh, here it is. Here. Israel's former public diplomacy minister erase all of Gaza from the face of the earth. That the Gazan monsters will fly to the southern fence and try to enter Egyptian territory or they will die. And their death will be evil. Gaza should be erased. Minister Galit Distel Atbaryan continues, and fire and smoke on the heads of the Nazis in the West Bank. A vengeful and cruel IDF is needed here. Anything less is immoral, just unethical. Atbaryan is from Netanyahu's Likud party. Okay? Remember, like, she's saying it in Hebrew, so, you know, it's...
Living in Gaza amongst the civilian population. If Israel has decided to eliminate a terror group, Hamas, as the world did with ISIS, for example. And I think there are a lot of parallels given the way they behaved on October the 7th to ISIS. How do you do it? How do you do it if you don't do it the way Israel is currently trying to do it?
Exactly not the way that Israel does it, because if you have one of the most advanced military powers in the world, and it takes you 3 weeks, 9,000 Palestinian civilian death, 21,000 injured. As we are talking right now, Israel just bombed Kichibalia, which is a known refugee camp. It is a very...
It was wild seeing
this is not
Americans.
self-defense. You
It was
know,
wild
like,
seeing
one of the
Americans
most
be like, "What?
questions
It doesn't look like a
Israel have
refugee
the right
camp.
to
It's got
defend itself."
buildings.
This is a no-value question.
There's no tents."
This is a no-value question.
Well, I would ask a different point. I would say not only do they have a right to defend themselves, which every country would
Yeah.
after a terror attack, right? But they actually have a duty and responsibility to their population to try and stop that happening again to them.
They've been doing...
And I do understand, and I agree with that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it takes you all of that time, all of these civilians, to take out a few hundred guerrilla fighters...
We don't know how many of the people who died.
thousand.
We don't know.
It
do we?
doesn't matter.
Yeah, but Bassem,
But-
you don't know, and I don't know.
We don't know, but
right?
like...
we don't even know if the casualty numbers are correct because they're all coming from Hamas.
And we
the
should,
health authority-
and we should believe Israel?
No, not necessarily. No, I don't believe either side.
But here's my problem with
But here's
Israel.
my point. I don't think we should assume that we know these statistics
Okay.
are correct.
That's
I don't think we
crazy.
should assume we know exactly.
Come on,
how many
kick his
children are
ass.
being killed.
Fucking
We do know a lot have been
dude,
killed.
kick
So
his
the
ass.
moral
Get the
argument
fuck
remains
out of
the
here.
same.
Bro's
We don't know how many
denying
Hamas
what you can see with your
terrorists
fucking eyes.
have been killed in the last 3 weeks. We just don't know, do we?
So basically, we're dealing with a very incompetent military force that has been sucking America dry for years, and then they cannot do the job.
But how else do they get rid of Hamas?
Not like that.
How do they do it?
I don't know, but not like that, because they've been.
I
trying
know.
the
You've got to
same-
have another-
Peace.
They have- first of all,
Peace.
I'm not a military
Peace. Look at the
expert.
history. Look at the history of the conflict. Peace.
trying the
That's
same
the only
thing
way to
for
starve out
years.
any
They
kind of
go-
reactionary force. Through
This
peace.
is not an eye for an eye anymore. This is an eye, a limb, a life, a house, a
But they don't-
neighborhood,
they
a whole
don't see-
population for an eye.
But
That
they
is-
don't see. I mean, your friend Ben Shapiro that you particularly despise.
Oh, I love Ben Shapiro. He's very smart.
I know, but you've been very critical of him, and that's fair enough. I'm sure he would be of you. But when I asked him about proportion, he said I don't care about a proportionate response.
So let's kill
Right?
civilians as
Hamas
until
did
then.
this, so we are going to get rid
Yeah,
of Hamas.
but he-
it's not in his eyes. It wasn't eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It was this group of terrorists did this, and we are now going to rid the world of these terrorists.
And this is very important to look at things in context. When you see how Israelis talk inside their community, there was a very famous post by Uriel Eritzol. He is the speechwriter of Netanyahu. He said, "What is so horrific about understanding that the whole Palestinians people are our enemies? All of them are enemy combatants. We should kill them, kill their mother, destroy their homes, the homes that they raised those snakes, so no snakes will be raised in this house anymore." And this was reposted by Ali Chaket, which is the minister of, wait for it, justice. It's not about Hamas anymore. It is not about Hamas. They can tell you it's about Hamas, but it's not about. It is basically. They have said it many times, Piers. This is a way to kind of push them into Sinai. This is not about eradicating Hamas. This ship has sailed. I am sorry, but like anybody who
It was
still
never
believes that
about
this is about Hamas,
Hamas.
is stupid.
Why did they
Because
do it
See,
before
I don't
Hamas?
agree with that.
Really?
No, because I think.
But why there?
I tell you what, I don't agree.
There are like 100 people.
I think
killed in
any
Gaza
country,
and
any
West Bank.
country that suffered the kind of terror attack that Israel suffered, with the kind of death toll that occurred that day, 1,500 plus people.
Okay, then if fucking
grandmothers,
Gaza has a
kids,
nuke, then they can
young
just
women being
deploy it
raped,
on Israel
kidnapped,
then?
beheaded,
Would you have the
being
same
reported.
perspective? Would you say the same thing,
Right,
Piers?
I mean, they found a young woman's skull. Right,
But,
somehow it had
but
been,
what about the
somehow it had been
but
severed
what about
from-
the babies that were beheaded?
Well, there was a report, and you and I had this discussion on air. You falsely quoted me, and I wanted to clarify that with
Yeah.
you in person. You thought I'd said that 40 babies had been
So what
beheaded.
did you say?
I never said that.
What did you say?
I said it's been reported that 40 babies were killed, some of whom had been beheaded. That's what I said.
Yeah. Totally,
there's a-
totally different. Yeah.
There's a very different. Well, it is different.
Yes.
Do you accept it?
English as a second language, so.
But they're
things
different
might-
things.
Of course, yes.
Between
sure.
saying 40 babies have been beheaded and 40 babies have been
All right, this
reported to have
motherfucker
been
even hit
killed,
the ESL.
including
So where are
some
those
who
beheaded
were beheaded.
babies?
Well, apparently journalists are being shown utterly horrific
Okay,
footage.
this comes to a very important question about credibility. Again, I'm not condoning what happened on October 7th, but I'm not a journalist. But as a journalist, wouldn't you take anything that an authority would say with a grain of salt?
Yes.
Especially if this authority have a long history of lying. And I'm just going to give a few examples. 1996, they bombed Kana. It's a refugee camp. They killed 106 people. And despite that they knew it's a refugee camp. They said, oh, maybe it's a one-time off. 2006, they bombed Kana again. 2014, they killed 2 teenagers at a checkpoint. They denied, as usual, but CNN was there. So they said, we have to say it. 2018, they killed a medic a Palestinian medic, and they fabricated a video showing that it's someone else, that he was a human shield. And then
I would say, Bassem,
can I just like finish?
Yeah, but I
that?
do want to respond.
And then 2010, they killed Ahmed Oraikat, denied it, then said it's okay, it's us. 2021, they bombed the media office in Hamas. It's not us, but no, I'm sorry. And then 11th May 2022, Shireen Abu Akleh, a reporter, your colleague, she's Palestinian, American citizen, she was shot in the head. And they provided forensic evidence and even a doctor's video that it was not them, it was Islamic Jihad. How can I expect to believe this regime, especially if the president of Israel comes down with this ridiculous thing? Have you seen it there?
No.
He said, okay. This was reported by Sky News, and it was the funniest thing I've seen in so much. This was a Colin Powell moment, but like the cheap edition. Mr. Herzog said, like Isaac Herzog, it's like, we have found evidence on one of the terrorists, a manual to create chemical bombs. And then he showed this. And he showed,
that's the thing. Like their counter isn't even good. They're just like fucking freestyling at this point because it doesn't matter because the American media, Western media will eat it up no matter how fucking silly it is.
And what he like have like local ingredients to make, and then this is like, this is a manual of Al-Qaeda, of course, conveniently written Qaeda. And let me read it to you in Arabic because this is funny. So, النشرة الدولية المعنية بالتطوير الذاتي والمعرفي للمجاهدين, which basically say. This is basically like a catalog for self-improvement for mujahideen. I didn't know that they have life coaches. So this, and you know what Sky News said? It's like, we cannot confirm or any of this, but we will show it anyway.
So let me respond.
So this is like this is a lying government.
So let me respond. I do think the Israeli government has lied.
All the time.
Right? I do think they've lied. I'm not going to dispute that. I do think they've been caught lying. I do think they've said things that turned out not to be true. I also think that 2 weeks ago, a hospital was bombed, and it was immediately.
Who do you think did it?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. Hamas immediately tell the world it was an Israeli airstrike, and that 500 people were killed, and that the hospital had been destroyed. And then, as the next couple of days go by, the hospital is relatively undamaged. The car park was obliterated. Many fewer people than 500 were killed.
How many people died?
We don't know. Because actually we're reliant on the Palestinian Health Authority, which is Hamas in Gaza, for the figures. So we don't know the number. But a lot fewer people died, it would appear, than the 500. We don't know.
50?
Either way, it's appalling, but it may not have been anywhere near as appalling as was first said by Hamas. But here's the point. Most independent studies of what happened have concluded that it was almost certainly a militant stroke terror group inside Gaza, and they fired a rocket which landed in the hospital car park.
We still
in other words,
do not have any evidence for this, by the way.
So I have an issue with that.
We don't have any physical evidence.
The priest and the patriarch of the hospital, because it's called the Baptist hospital, said that they have received multiple warning from Israel that they're going to hit the hospital.
It blows my fucking mind.
One of the
like, I'm telling you, it blows my mind, especially because
basically
the reality is it could still very well be an Islamic Jihad rocket.
New York Times
okay, it could.
Something
the problem is
shot from Israel, and the thing is,
no, they didn't.
Anyway, let's just listen to them.
Numbers.
Bassem, that's not true.
Okay.
The New York Times has not reported that it was Israel.
No, they said
they haven't.
Okay.
That's not true.
Over 10 years, Hamas launched 35,000 rockets into Israel.
And many failed.
They killed 69 people. And 25% military, only part of them were civilians. So over 10 years of 35,000 rockets, they killed 69 people. But in one strike, you want to tell me that these glorified firecrackers caused that kind of damage?
Yes, it looks like they did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a very good way to dismiss this. So my original and immediate reaction to it was incredibly justified. Anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. I will go to bat. I will fucking argue against them. And not only that, but also my immediate assumption still stands. I said on the first day, given the fact that Israel had bombed this hospital before, given the fact that Israel immediately lied and said that they weren't doing a fucking military, an Israeli Air Force campaign in the area while they actually were doing it. We saw it with our own 2 eyes using the same Al Jazeera live stream coverage that Israel tried to use falsely to create a new narrative. Okay. And knowing what I know about Israel routinely lying about bombing attacks and then trying to blame it on Islamic Jihad or Hamas, that of course, all of the circumstantial evidence on top of the only verified footage that we had at the time being consistent with an airstrike, okay, with the audio cues at the very least, being consistent with an airstrike, made me understandably say this is very likely to be Israel. It's definitely Israel. And also, the only way that I will say it's not Israel, considering that they had dropped 7,000 bombs thus far and had hit that very same hospital with an artillery shell in the past, 2 days prior, okay, 2 days prior, is that as long as, if there is a third-party independent investigation that does soil testing, that shows, that finds fragments, one way or another, there's always fragments. Why does no one ever talk about all the goddamn airstrikes around the hospital? I did. I talked about it. Anyway, my point is this. I was wrong on my assertion that that it was an Mark 84 rocket. The damage was not consistent with that. The crater was not consistent with that. The damage from the human casualty was, but the on-the-ground damage showed that that wasn't the case. That much is true. Okay. Since then, Israel has also bombed around a hospital heavily multiple times, multiple other hospitals. They blew up the church structure in a Christian church. Anyway, that's besides the point. But what I'm trying to explain here is all of the circumstantial evidence abso-fucking-lutely points to this being Israel. Unless there is actual conclusive evidence that it is not Israel, why the fuck would you ever assume, especially going just off of what Israel has said, which has been completely countered, completely and utterly discredited by the New York Times, by the BBC, and every other fucking outlet now at this point, with forensic journalists that looked into Israel's claims and immediately said, no, this is not true. This is completely unverified, unsubstantiated. Why the fuck would you ever go, yeah, no, although Israel has killed 8,000 Palestinians so far, 3,000 children so far, this one, it's not them. And also, not only that, but the idea, and it makes me go fucking crazy, especially when I think about this, okay? Especially when I think about this. The idea that, like, it's only bad when Islamic Jihad accidentally blows up their own people. Like, that's the only condemnable action. Every other fucking explosion that has killed a Palestinian child is good, but the one time, like, even if we are to assume that what Israel is saying is correct, even if we are to assume what Israel is saying is correct, though, what is the argument here? That it's only bad if Islamic Jihad accidentally fucking blows up their own people, but when Israel is deliberately destroying the entirety of the fucking Gaza Strip and killing 3,000 plus children, then that's good? Those are all good kills? Those are all good confirmed kills? If you ask the Israeli television channel that shows the death toll, by the way, they believe the Gazan Health Ministry. They use the Gazan Health Ministry's casualty numbers to say 8,000 plus civilians have died, including the fucking children. That's what they say. So they believe the Gazan Health Ministry, and they say all of those Palestinians are terrorists. They call them terrorists in Israel. That's what they say on the fucking television. You cannot listen to what Israel says and then refuse to hear what they say when they're being fucking bloodthirsty. Lil head bro just can't accept he was wrong and jump the gun. You can fucking cry and complain all day, every day. The truth is not on your side. I've said since day fucking one. By the way, thank you for the $3 donation, dumbass. Said it from the first day. I said this to Ethan as well, and I said it in general.
Think about killing Jews the first thing in the morning. He thinks about being there at 5 o'clock at the first 50 people in the line for bread, because if he doesn't, he will miss the food for his family. And he goes back and he finds a message saying that we are going to bomb your house. He comes back, he loses his whole family. Now tell me, what is a proportionate response for that?
I don't know. I don't know.
You cannot create terrorism and then you.
I don't know.
You have. They have created
But
this.
I don't know is the answer. But Bassem, let me ask you this. Hamas will have known when they perpetrated what they did on October the 7th, what the scale of response was likely to be. How does that help the Palestinian people
I don't know.
that they are supposed to serve?
I don't know. The wheels are already set in motion.
But it doesn't, does it?
I do not. I feel sometimes that Hamas is with us in the room. That we are bringing Hamas. Who has the power in this equation? Who has the fourth largest and strongest military power? The whole idea about Israel, it's like, oh my God, the Arabs are going to destroy us. Look at the map.
Hamas, hang on. Hang on. Hamas's stated goal is the eradication of Israel and the Jewish people.
Yes.
They make no pretense about it. They've made no attempt, unlike the Nazis, who
Absolutely.
try to
That's
cover
not
up
even
their
true
crimes.
anymore, but
They've
it doesn't
made no
matter.
attempt to
Yes.
try and deny what they brazenly boasted about it.
Yes.
They are proud of what they did, right? And they will have known again. The scale of what they did on October the 7th would have prompted this kind of response, which would have led to thousands of innocent Palestinians getting killed. And my question for you...
I wish the 7th of October never happened.
Right, but
every time something
you say
happened.
Hamas is everywhere. Well, yeah, actually, all roads,
but-
roads on this
but-
particular
okay.
part of the crisis, and I accept it's been going on for 75 years, this conflict, but all roads in this crisis lead to Hamas and what they did.
And
Don't
not necessarily, because
yes.
all roads goes to the condition that created Hamas. If the Jewish people were expelled from Europe and went to Argentina or South Africa and Uganda and went in and took the land, you would have Hamas in all of these
You and I
places.
can agree that the conditions Palestinian people have had to endure in Gaza for a very long time are completely unacceptable. I think it's completely unacceptable that Israel has wielded such control over the people of Gaza, working out who can come in and who can go out, turning on and off water and power on a whim, turning off the internet on and off at a whim,
Our
all
love
that
is
kind of
like-
stuff. I can completely agree.
Oh,
with.
that's really fucked up.
But
And
given that I think
Palestinians,
we agree Hamas
understandably,
are a
can't
terror
be
Okay, let's
can't
say-
get mad
Let me
at
finish my
that.
question. Given that we agree that Hamas is a terror organization who have a publicly stated position of annihilating not just Israel, but Jewish people, and as we saw on October the 7th, they mean it. If you are Israel, what do you do to get rid of those people who have shown the world that's exactly what they will actually do if they get the chance?
You know what I would do? I would give the Palestinians what they deserve. Terrorism is a virus.
Yes?
It's a virus.
I agree.
If a patient with a flu came to you and you're a doctor, how can you treat that patient? How do you treat as a doctor? How do you do?
Well, you're the doctor.
You give them nutrition,
Yeah.
fluids,
Yeah.
and rest. So the immunity of the body gets rid of the virus on its own. If I received that patient with a flu and I took a sledgehammer, it's like, why are you not getting better? Do you think that patient will get better? No. You are weakening him. You are making him worse.
I think if you have two groups of people who are ideologically wedded to your destruction as a state and as a populace, and you're constantly firing rockets, as Hamas have done for over a decade now,
This radicalizing only goes in one direction, Piers,
you have
for
to
you.
stop.
That's the
These
problem.
are terrorists who've now shown on October.
Like he says Israelis are fucking radicalized by Hamas rockets, which literally are nothing in comparison to what Israel does. Like straight up, statistically, objectively. And then he goes, Israel is radicalized. They have to do something. They have to do terrorism. Much worse terrorism in comparison to fucking Hamas.
which many people think on both sides is inevitable and should happen as a consequence of what they did. The big question is, how do you do that? And I don't know.
The answer
any
is
other
simple.
way
It's
other
so
than the
simple.
way
It's
Israel
not that
is
hard.
currently
It is
doing
not. The
Moral
application
quandary about
and the
it.
practice of said answer might be difficult. But the answer from a moral quandary
that's the
perspective
question, isn't it?
is simple.
That is not even a question. That was not even a question because that would be ridiculous.
You talk about the normalization of the region. I mean, the theory that I most buy into, supported by recent, I think, Wall Street Journal reporting that hundreds of Hamas terrorists had gone to Iran for training before this attack.
Okay.
It had obviously been very carefully organized, and so that is, I think, highly likely. But if you're Iran and you're looking at all this normalization and you're looking at Saudi Arabia being next, this is your worst nightmare. So
What?
a perfect time to commit an atrocity like this, through your proxy of Hamas.
Again, I'm not a political expert to know what is the background, but let me tell you.
It's a likely theory.
Is Hamas justified? Is all of the horrible conditions that Palestinians are living in, is that a justification for Hamas doing what they did in October
No.
7th? Good.
Do you think so?
Of course not.
Right. So we're agreed.
No, of course.
And it may well be here, by the way,
Wait, keep
as
going.
I said, that if Israel...
So then
perceives
ask, is Israel's fucking response to
it backfires
justification?
horribly, it leads to a much wider conflict involving many other people, possibly including Iran directly, and it could be a horrendous escalation and a massive war raging through the whole region.
Did they
and
cut
that
that
is my
part?
fear about it. But I come back to the central point of justification, and I'm really struggling to see what else Israel is supposed to do to get rid of Hamas. And if you've got an alternative, let's hear it.
I do. Piers, this is never about Hamas.
It's a llama.
Believe me, it is never about Hamas. If somebody tells you who they are, listen. Israel has been telling the world all the time, they need to clear the Gaza Strip into Egypt.
You think that's always been the plan?
Always there. I mean, they have said it.
Why did they
have said
settle
many
it?
times.
Why did they settle Gaza in the same way that they
said?
settled the West Bank? Of course.
And do you think when Egypt takes them, do you think they go back? No, never. And then when they're done with Gaza, they will go back to the West Bank. They will kind of like build the settlements around them, and then until they push them into Jordan, because that is the plan. They have token, not just Benjamin Netanyahu, everybody said like there's no state, two states. It is one state, and it's for the Jewish
I don't
people.
think he believes in a two-state solution.
Nobody believes in a two-state solution.
Couple things. Having this conversation like, what? Do you agree Hamas needs to go though? Of course. But the reality is, the only way to do that is doing the exact opposite of what you've done so far. The conditions you've created made Hamas. The conditions you created Hamas. There is no violent force. There is no surgical strike that removes Hamas from power. If you wanted to fucking do a surgical strike, I mean, you know where the leaders are. There's two conflicting thoughts inside of the Hamas organization that you can hear from. You have one guy in Lebanon and you have another guy in Doha. Okay? They both have, like, to varying degrees, have said the same thing. You also have other foreign ministers and things of that nature, like other members of Hamas all around the fucking world. Okay? If you wanted to, you could arrest them and then and have an international tribunal, an international criminal court would be put together, and it wouldn't be just them, by the way, it would be Israeli officials as well. This is what I mean when I say international law. If we're going to live in a fucking international rule-based order, we have to do that. We have to do exactly that. We have to do, and this will require military action. Military action from the international community. If you want to do globalism, and if you want to talk about international law, you have to follow international law. It can't just be America that just violates it whenever the fuck they see fit, and America's allies or in America's expression of imperialism in the Middle East, Israel gets to do whatever the fuck they want. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Palestinians pled for the rule of international law and never once have a chance neither to be judged by it or use it for their own defense. So skewed and it sucks. Yes, nobody gives a shit. Why? Because they don't have any material wealth. They have nothing. They're fucking broke boys. They're poor. They don't have like a robust industry. They have nothing. So why the fuck would anybody care about them? That's the real shit. The only reason why America even had like something that is remotely similar or remotely sympathetic to like Palestinians was because of the Gulf leadership and the Gulf leadership at the time saying they fucking care about Palestinians, or at the very least claiming that they care about Palestinians in an effort to undermine Israeli influence in the region. So that's the only reason why historically American leadership had ever given a single fuck about Palestinians.
Assume somehow we get to a place, possibly at the instigation of countries like Saudi Arabia and others getting directly involved, where you get to a place where Hamas are removed. And I don't quite see how that happens without enormous further bloodshed, but let's assume they get removed. Let's assume that Netanyahu is removed from office, which I think is highly likely just from the fury of his own people about what they see as the defensive and security failings, plus his attack on the Supreme Court already causing huge polarization. Let's assume we get new leadership in both places. Could there still be peace? Could there still be a two-state solution?
No.
It can never happen.
No, because Israel have already shown it's not about Netanyahu. It is the policy of Israel not to give the Palestinians their seat. It has always been there.
But what if you find leadership that understands?
You will not.
But why are you so...
You will not.
Do you not see there's any chance of doing that here?
No, not with Israel. Obama, after he left office, he wrote in his book, the problem with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is that one side is extremely powerful and one side is extremely weak. There is absolutely nothing to oblige that strong side to give anything. All over the years, Israel showed you many times that they are not interested in peace. Leave Gaza. Forget Hamas for a second. The West Bank. What have they been doing in the West Bank? The illegal settlements did not stop a single day.
No,
they
no. And it's completely wrong.
Yeah, but the thing
But it's wrong. I agree with you.
But you see what they're doing in the West Bank right now? They are creating little Gazas. They are creating little Gazas.
Yeah.
And until they are like squeeze them.
It's completely wrong.
There is a hilarious documentary called The Wanted 18. It is like an Israeli-Palestinian co-production. And it tells about the incredible story about the residents of Beit Sahur. It's a Palestinian town next to the Nazareth. And they said they don't want to depend on the milk coming from the kibbutz. So they bought 18 cows. 18 cows. And they didn't know how to milk the cows or have a cow farm. So they were like engineers and doctors. So they sent people to kind of like to learn how to do the farm. So they bought the cows and they started to produce milk and they started to sell the milk to the villages. The Israeli authorities were not very comfortable. So one day the military government came in and was like, those cows, and I quote, constitutes an existential threat to the national security of the state of Israel. You need to get rid of them. And the movie goes about like the hilarious attempts of hiding those cows between the butchers and the houses. And in one scene, a cow is actually running and the Israeli soldiers are like running behind it and they corner it and they're about to kill it. And you know what did the cow say? You didn't fall for this. Cows don't speak. Yeah! But you know, it actually said something. You know what did it say? It said Hamas. But anyways. But you see, this is the ideology of the Israeli ruling party. They are not interested. They're not even allowing you to get your own cows.
But this comes back to what you were saying at the start, which is about the hate on both sides.
No, I'm not talking about the hate.
It's not hate on both sides.
About
Shut the fuck up. It's not hate on both sides. One side.
That we are like the Western world. We are secular. I don't know if you know this, but they're not just like secular, like Christians against their own Arab. I'm talking about like Arabs with Palestinian, with Israeli identity. I'm talking about them being even racist against their own people. 1950, Yemenis immigrants that came from Yemen and they were in the transition camp waiting to be transferred into Israel. Their kids were taken away from them and given to white Ashkenazi Jews because they were not white enough.
But Bassem, what would
He's talking about Jews, Arab Jews.
Went to Gaza.
He's talking about how fucking racist Israel is. It's true.
Exactly.
Even I wouldn't go to Gaza.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah, it's a dystopia. Who would? But like, but I'm just.
So it's not just. You're raising points about Israel, making out that somehow they're as bad or worse.
No. But
what's going on there? Hamas has ruled over the Palestinians in the most oppressive way imaginable.
Absolutely, but you know what? Hamas never claimed that they are the only democracy in the region. They never claimed that they are secular. They never said that they adopt Western tradition. And they definitely, they did not use that lie in order to carpet bomb a whole country.
Okay.
Now here, I want to say one example, and I'm going to leave you.
All right.
Israel, you think that Israel will like, by the way, the whole thing about the Yemeni children, you can find it in New York Times. It's called like the lost children of Israel, the forgotten. But even when Ethiopian people were immigrated to Israel, Ethiopian Jews, women then report 2013. That's not like 50 years ago. They reported that they were given against their consent and without their knowledge contraceptive shots so they wouldn't reproduce because they are the wrong color. Israel is
Speak on it, motherfucker.
Racist,
Speak on it. Holy fuck.
apartheid country that is projecting this shiny example of secularism and democracy for the people, so people can accept whatever they do because they look at Palestinians as lesser people. This is the whole point.
100%.
This is the whole point. And I would like to quote Winston Churchill. He had a quote that say, I don't believe that we have made a great wrong to the Red Indians of America or the black people of Australia because they were replaced by a higher race, a stronger race, a more word-wisely race. This is why Queen Rania is criticizing the West. This is why we here said, like, where are your values? Because this is the crux of the problem. It's not Hamas. It's not Palestine. It is people looking at us as lesser human beings.
Bassem, I don't dispute the characterization that a lot of the Israel administration look upon Palestinians as lesser people. Otherwise, they wouldn't.
They even look at the Ethiopian Jews and Yemeni Jews like less.
I wouldn't dispute that. I want to quote you to end this.
No, why would you end this? Don't end this.
We'll be talking for 2 hours.
Why not?
At some point,
we're
we have
having
to end
an
this.
amazing time.
We can do another interview. Well, this one goes big. I think this is a neat way to end it. He said, I actually believe there is a middle ground between everybody and they can meet. I direct my criticism for the extreme of each one of them. That was you, Bassem Youssef. I agree with that.
Fucking liberals.
I don't share
liberals,
your
man.
view.
Liberals.
Liberalism
is a mental disorder.
I think there can't be with the current leadership structures in both countries or both places. But I definitely think you've got to be optimistic about peace. You just need to find people that can forge it.
I hope so. But the reason, listen, I refused to come on your show when your producer first called me for the first interview because I was scared. I was afraid. For me, that was a career suicide. Because I'm talking. This is even important because you are someone who's always talked about like against cancel culture, about like speaking your mind out, speaking your mind out. I left Egypt and I came to America, the land of the free, the home of the brave. But I didn't know that there was a fine print said that you cannot speak about Israel. I have issue with that. Israel is a foreign country. They're allies. Good.
But you can speak about Israel.
How many people lost their jobs? Even Bella Hadid. Bella Hadid,
Bella Hadid.
By the way,
she hasn't lost her job.
No, but she's talked about death threats. She's talking about like being silenced.
Sure.
And by the way, Bella Hadid she's Palestinian. And you know who else? Gigi Hadid sisters.
I love the Hadid.
They are with us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I know them both. They're very nice people.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you are that high and you cannot speak about it, and it's not about. It's
Well, you can. You just have to.
You can, but you'll get fucking.
I've spoken out about these
silence,
issues, and you get shot at, not literally, but metaphorically, all day long on social media. But that shouldn't stop people from doing it.
I'm just like wondering, as an American,
you do
as an American, yeah. But like, I'm doing now because like the first interview went well.
Right.
I'm doing that because I want people to see that you can really speak up and not just get canceled, but get rewarded. My career is going fine.
Yeah,
it's great because I want people to have the courage. There should be no limits.
I agree with
I'm
that.
kind of like so confused as an American citizen why every American presidential candidate have to go and kiss the hand and bend the knees to AIPAC. This is a lobby that works for a foreign country interest. Why don't we have like a lobby for Saudi Arabia? It is they're giving us more money.
You know the great thing? You can say that here.
Yes.
You couldn't say it in Egypt. That's why you're living here.
Yes, but again, a lot of people feel the burn, the heat whenever they come
But
down.
if I was an American, I'd be going, all right, Bassem, all right, we'll take the criticism because you can do that in this country.
And I'm happy.
When you criticize the government in your own country,
yeah,
they drove you out.
Yes, and that's why I came to America, to play the white man's game, to actually to pass this acquired white privilege to my children.
But the problem it's not just a country of white people.
But here's the problem.
And the white man's game, the game in America is not a white man's game. It's a game that actually has a democracy and believes in freedom of speech.
But there are dog whistles everywhere.
You're not going to be put in jail for this interview.
Or I can lose my career and I can lose jobs, and you know that.
You could in Egypt, you could.
No, here you can.
In Egypt, they arrested you.
Here you can.
And they threatened you, and you would have probably ended up in prison or dead.
Here, a lot of people lost their jobs because they spoke up.
It depends what they say.
Of course, but again,
if you're Kanye West and you spew anti-Semitic garbage,
I'm not.
You're going to lose. You're going to lose what you have.
I will never adopt that kind of point of view. But the thing is, there is dog whistles everywhere. As I told you at the beginning, you cannot just say it's like anti-Semite. Like, I mean, now, how come that the Palestinian flag is outlawed. By the way, it's outlawed in Israel. If you raise the Palestinian, you go to jail. And now they're saying like the Palestinian flag is a pro-Hamas. No, it's not a pro-Hamas. You know, I was doing a comedy show in Arizona, and a guy was like wearing like a kufiyah, like a scarf, and I took it, and I'm not like in hyperbole and like wearing symbols, but I just took it because like, why are we gonna outlaw colors and flags? That is absurd. That is not right.
I agree. I don't think you should, but you should certainly outlaw Hamas.
They're already outlawed. I mean, I'm not supporting
because they're a
them.
terror group.
Okay. But the people with the power, the people who supposedly have the...
And you should, by the way, I will say this, you should be able to criticize the Israeli government without being accused of being anti-Semitic.
But
I have in this interview repeatedly, and I'm not anti-Semitic. I just have a problem with all of what the Israeli government's been doing.
And I have a problem with how any criticism... to
If he
Israel
keeps
by
doing
some
this, he will be, though. Because Piers has been cooking
not
too
Some
long.
people- yeah, but a lot of the people doing it are actually anti-Semitic.
Yes, but also a lot of Zionists are against Israel, that they hate the Jews. You know,
We've discussed that. I want to end on a happy note.
But before that, I want to just like say 2 words about the media, which is, please.
Sure.
Mr. Zomlot, the Palestinian ambassador that you have, this guy lost 6 members of his family in an Israeli strike. And when he went on like some British news thing, he sat down and the lady told him...
No,
like,
Piers
"We're
does
very
deserve
sorry for
credit.
Piers
I gave him this credit.
I'm sure you don't condemn the killing of Israeli civilians." What? In the same moment. There's another girl like called Yara Eid. She was like on Sky News. And the girl was like crying, like, "I lost 30 members of my family, 17 of them are children, I lost my best friend." And then, what did you think would happen forget about empathy.
I think a lot of people...
What about manners?
Well, I think you have to start... I've said this repeatedly. You have to start from a place of humanity. You have to look at what happened on October the 7th and feel utterly outraged and disgusted for the loss of human life.
Yeah.
And you also have to feel that for what's happening in Gaza to innocent people.
But
and if you can't feel both for both sets of people, both sets of innocent people being killed, if you can't feel a sense of despair and horror over their deaths, you don't have any humanity.
Believe me, Piers, it's not really about that. There's a deep sentiment in the Middle East, in Arabs, that the West do not look at us as equals.
Well, you know what?
So what I did, I went to the machines.
Yeah.
And I asked ChatGPT simple questions.
Oh, my God.
Do Israelis deserve to be free? And you know what they tell me? Yes. Israelis deserve the right like any other people. And then I asked the same question, do Palestinians deserve to be free? And you know what they tell me? It is complex. It is a sensitive issue.
Well, it's not complex. It's not sensitive. The Palestinian people should be free.
Yeah, but
and they
even
should,
the machines
well,
have...
let me finish. And they should have exactly the same
anti-Semite
rights to
alert.
freedom,
We
freedom
will.
of expression and the way to lead their lives and to water and to power and to internet that Israelis have and we have here in America and we have back in my home country of the UK. And I want that for the Palestinian people. We've got to end it there.
Okay.
Mainly because I've worked up a hell of a hunger in 2 hours of interview and you have brought your wife's cooking. Hala, so tell me again how I do this.
Okay, so basically...
Take a piece of this,
you
put it in the olive oil.
Yes.
Which is from the West Bank.
Yeah, from the West Bank.
And then a little bit of this.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.